Good morning. Today is February.
Groundhog Day.
The what?
What?
Good morning. Today is
Groundhog
February.
Day.
Wait, what day is it? Oh, it's Groundhog Day. Is that when it happens more than once? No, that's not Groundhog Day.
That's the movie Groundhog Day.
Wait, what happens
That
on
is the movie Groundhog Day.
Oh, Groundhog Day is just the groundhog comes out. His name is Herbert, I think.
Nope. Punxsutawney Phil.
That you made that up.
Nope.
His name is Philip?
It's Punxsutawney Phil in the town Punxsutawney.
Oh, I thought it happened at the White House. So we were talking about violence as a whole. We have been seeing a lot of violence, even, in recent events, a bunch of them happening in Minnesota. But to be quite frank, we see violence all over the world and every single day, as a matter of fact, every single second, perhaps even. And, I thought it might be a good thing to talk about and perhaps, I guess, some guidance on how we are to pray. Because, to be honest, sometimes when I pray for the world, just, on my own, like at home or whatever, it's hard because you see that stuff happens every single day. Something wrong happens every single day. And it almost gets to a point where it's draining to pray about, draining to think about, versus you just kind of give up. Like, you just kind of ignore it. And so we'll be talking about some of these topics and a fun little topic that I have for us today in our fun segment. So we'll be talking about those things a little bit more this morning on the Dear Church podcast. You are listening to the DCP. Welcome to the Dear Church podcast, where we exist to fill your ears and your minds with the study of God to see the world as disciples of Christ. My name is Sam Yang. We have with us Pastor Eugene, Junzuk, and David. We are talking this morning about the topic of violence, and I think just broadly speaking. And, I talked about kind of the violence that we see today, but violence has been in human history since the beginning. When we look at Genesis chapter 4, the moment that Adam and Eve leave the Garden of Eden, we see violence. And this is Genesis chapter 4, verse 8. Cain spoke to Abel, his brother, and when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. This is quite literally, the first generation of human beings after Adam and Eve. And here we see the first murder, we see violence. And so I guess the question is, this is embedded in our human history from the beginning. Why is there violence? Where does this even come from? Let's just kind of talk about it from the ground floor up, I guess. What's the root of violence?
Violence is really a fascinating topic for me. And, I'm the one that asked you to talk about this one. It's something that I think about very often. I have a lot of thoughts about violence. Not violent thoughts, but thoughts about violence. Yeah, I was going to say, that's not, I don't know. And it's been a subject that's always intrigued me as a young child. When I see violence, when violence is done to me, when I see violence in a broader scale, like when you think about war and things like that.
Yeah.
When you even think about what Stalin said about, one death is a tragedy, 1 million is a statistic. And so how we can't really even fully grasp violence around the world today, but when we see it individually, up close, personally, it really does something to us. So when you see violence happen on TV, it's you up close and personal, it does something to you. And that's why people get so emotionally aroused, meaning it's peaked. Their emotions, and they're angry, they're sad, they're distraught. All these things happen when they see violence. Obviously, there's the other side where you might be I don't know. Some people might have endorphins released.
Some people are attracted to it.
Yeah. And so, we could talk about all of that if we have enough time. And this is something that I could really talk about for hours. And I think one good director that captured it all, since we mentioned him earlier, I don't think it was recorded, but
I don't think so.
Earlier we talked about Quentin.
Oh, Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah,
and so great director.
Quentin,
good guy.
As far as I know, I didn't really dive deep into it, but as far as I know, his 2 major movies that made him a hit, I think, were his best. And the first one was Reservoir Dogs, that I can recall. and the second one is Pulp Fiction. And those two were probably his best movies that he's ever done. I don't know. People may disagree. Maybe they saw some other stuff, but I think those are probably the two best ones because I thought they captured violence in society well. And I don't know if he knew exactly what he was doing, but sometimes a director or writer, they may not fully understand something, but what they're doing is they're depicting what they see in society at large. So they just depict it. It's like a mirror. So sometimes the arts act as a mirror. They'll just show you. It's not like they fully understand something, but they'll show it. And that's why, you know, that's why people think there's this disconnect between actors and society too, because actors will be living in this bubble and they'll get, you know, they'll start talking about social change and things like that. And people will say, what do actors know? But they're such
People
good
say that?
actors. Yeah. They're such good actors, meaning they know how to mimic things really well or imitate or, you know, pretend. And those are things that they do well because, you know, what you're doing is you're taking something and you're just copying it and you're putting it on the screen for other people to see. I won't get into Reservoir Dogs, but I get into Pulp Fiction. I think Pulp Fiction I saw maybe in upwards of 30 times.
Wow. I've never seen it once.
Yeah. It's not a good movie. I don't recommend it.
But you saw it 30 times.
Yeah, but this is when I was a kid. This is, yeah. So I told some pastors this when I was training to be a minister. So before I was ordained. And they said, no wonder you're this way. They literally said that. They said, no wonder you're this way.
I don't even know what that means.
I know what that means. But it was somewhat forming, but it's something that I really wanted to explore, you know? It's not just Pulp Fiction or Reservoir Dogs. If you look at, you know, things like The Odyssey, and like I think there's a movie coming out later this year.
Matt Damon.
And if you look at Dionysius, like the Greek gods, all these other depictions of in mythology, there's always violence involved, okay? There's always like, there's the benevolent figure like Zeus, and then there's the malevolent figure, not Hades, like Dionysius. And so those are like things that we see in not even just in current day storytelling, but folklore, like myth. And we see it throughout our human history. We're always trying to figure out violence, always. One of the amazing things that we have as Christians, and I can't emphasize this enough, one of the most amazing things we have as Christians is the Bible. It is the most spectacular thing that we hold, because what the Bible does, all the myths and all these like things that we're trying to understand, what the Bible does is it demystifies all of it. And so when we read a story like Cain and Abel, it demystifies the things that we saw in myths, and you know the stories that we see. It'll explain Pulp Fiction. It'll explain Dionysius. It'll explain things like, you know, all the things that we're seeing, and you know, I think you wanted to talk about John Wick later. It'll explain all of that in such a way that when it demystifies something, it reveals then what is at the core and underneath all the layers that we've been searching for in our human selves. And that's amazing to me. That's amazing to me because this is what humanity has been looking for forever. And then here we have the Word of God showing us in such, you know, it's simple, meaning it's brief, and yet it's so articulate. It's so deep that you could look at a story like Genesis chapter 4 or Genesis chapter 3 or Genesis chapter 2 and 1 all the way to 11. And I think I did a sermon series on this, but you could look at it over and over and again. And this is something that I was pretty much convinced of as I go throughout life. Let's say if I were to preach a sermon series on Genesis chapter 1 through 11 every 10 years, I think every 10 years there would be something else that I would be, not a new insight, but something else that I would be transformed by.
Yeah.
Because these timeless truths have such a variety of applications. And this is something that I get to see. And so, you know, yeah, I really enjoyed Pulp Fiction because also, and this is true for Reservoir Dogs too, but Pulp Fiction, especially to me, what if you didn't see the movie, it's fine. But just in a nutshell, to me, was the ultimate reality of ungrace. Everyone gets what they deserve.
I see. Okay.
Everyone gets what they deserve, meaning everyone basically dies.
Yeah.
And they die a pretty pathetic, tragic, like oopsie daisy death sometimes too. But they just die, right? Some people get assaulted. Some people get sexually assaulted and all that stuff. It's all pretty horrific. And that kind of stuff as a younger man fascinated me because it was a mirror, a reflection of the underlying violence in society. I believe that in society there is this layer of violence that always needs to get out. It always needs to get out. So whatever violence that you're seeing on TV, it just didn't happen because of this. And I think that's the mistake that people hold on to, or people, are duped by. This violence didn't all of a sudden happen. It's there. It's always been there. And it needs to be there, and it needs to get out. And that's what human society has always been trying to tame, taper, push down, regulate, try so that it doesn't run amok. Because once violence runs amok, you can't have society. Does that make sense?
But where does that? So if it's there, where does it come from? Like, do we make it in our own hearts? Like, where is the source if it's already there?
So there's a lot of theories on this, but we should actually go to the entire story of Cain and Abel. And again, you did read some of that, but let's just have you go from verse 1 through 16.
Yep.
And maybe, if I can, we'll parse through some of the verses there.
This is, once again, Genesis chapter 4, starting in verse 1. Now Adam knew Eve his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain, saying, I have gotten a man with the help of the Lord. And again she bore his brother Abel. Now Abel was a keeper of sheep, and Cain a worker of the ground. In the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground, and Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock and of their fat portions. And the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain and his offering he had no regard. So Cain was very angry, and his face fell. The Lord said to Cain, Why are you angry, and why is your face fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? If you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door, its desires for you, and you must rule over it. Cain spoke to Abel's brother, and when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, Where is Abel your brother? He said, I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper? And the Lord said, What have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground. And now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it shall no longer yield to you its strength. You shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth. Cain said to the Lord, My punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, you have driven me today away from the ground, and from your face I shall be hidden. I shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me. Then the Lord said to him, Not so. If anyone kills Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And the Lord put a mark on Cain, lest any who found him should attack him. Then Cain went away from the presence of the Lord and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden.
That story doesn't end there. It goes throughout the entire Bible. This theme goes throughout the entire Bible. There's a little section that ends here. There's so much here. We won't go through all of it again. But let's go to the first thing. Was there violence here? Absolutely. What was there before violence? What was there before violence? And then we saw it. And this is something Rene Girard really picks up on as well in his book, The Violence and the Sacred. I highly recommend it. He wrote it in French, but there are English translations out there. But this is where we talked about like mimetic desire. But where did the violence come from? And then we saw it exposed, though. Again, the violence coming origin, it doesn't exactly overtly say, but we do know that Cain was very angry. When the Lord had regard for Abel's sacrifice and not Cain's, right? So the Lord regarded Abel's sacrifice. That means he looked on it, and that means he showed favor to it because he's looking at his sacrifice. but he wasn't Cain's. Now, a little bit deeper thinking, and then I think most people might say this is a good enough exegesis, and I think it is. But if you were to think about it a little deeper, there are differences between Cain and Abel that stand out. Again, this is a very short passage, but each sentence is chock full of meaning, in my opinion. Does Abel have a meaning next to his name? It doesn't explain why Abel is Abel, but it does explain why Cain is Cain. Why is there a difference there? Why won't it say like, oh, and then the second one was named Abel because of this and that? Now we know Abel means, vapor or breath, right? But it's just Abel back then, right? And so why is there a lengthy explanation of the name of Cain? Oh, just because he's the firstborn. But then already from the beginning, there are comparisons drawn between Cain and Abel. There's the firstborn, there's the secondborn, they're brothers. One actually has meaning that is specified, that Eve says, this is why I name, him Cain. And this is where the tradition came where the wives would name the children. Even in Jewish tradition, the wives would traditionally name the children. And so we have all this coming from just chapter 4. But starting from verse 2, it says there's more comparisons. One was it says Abel first now. So they flip it. It says Abel was the keeper of sheep and Cain was a worker of the ground. So Cain was a farmer and Abel was a shepherd. Now the differences start to get more stark and greater. And if you look at it, what is Abel as a shepherd? Where is Abel most of the time if you're a shepherd?
In the field. In
the field, you're outside. And if you're a farmer, and if you're, gathering, stuff like that, you're not necessarily a wanderer, right?
Yeah.
Because the sheep has to wander, right? The sheep has to go graze from land to land because once they finish the pasture land, the shepherd needs to move them to another pasture land.
Gotta go.
Not necessarily so with the farmer. The farmer can just stay in one patch of land and continue to harvest and grow from there. And so you see the difference between someone who stays at home then and someone who's kind of an outsider, who doesn't come home a lot. In fact, spends most of his time outside, right? And so what happens then? And so now it came time to bring an offering. There is never any mention before about the Lord requiring an offering. It just happens. It just happens that Abel and Cain are going to bring an offering. Now, again, I'm not going to everything that scholars have talked about on this. So let me just get to the main point here. When Cain didn't get his offering accepted, remember when the Lord didn't have regard for Cain's offering, instead he had it for Abel's, it made Cain very upset. It doesn't say, however, that he wasn't envious of his brother before. It doesn't. But you can kind of surmise that there definitely was envy before. And this is where Rene Girard, he would call it mimetic desire. So it is basically envy. And this is where the envy leads to rivalry, and rivalry will ultimately lead to violence because of envy. And then we see here, what were they in rivalry over? It was for the Lord's regard, okay? So in a sense, if you're talking about, the broad picture of everything, what were they fighting over? They were fighting over the highest thing. So you know how we fight over little things? This story is talking about, all right, fine. You could talk about little things and medium things and big things, but it all points to the highest thing. So they were pointing to the highest good.
Yeah.
And so they were fighting over the highest good. And guess who got the highest good? It was Abel. It was not Cain. And so Cain is now very upset that Abel is able to get the highest good, which is the Lord's regard, right? But here we see that the Lord talks to Cain. And I think we talked about this at length in previous podcasts, so I won't. And that he says something that is very familiar to Genesis chapter 3, right? When the Lord talks to Eve, right? Before she's called Eve, but the Lord talks to Eve about your husband ruling over you. And then so he uses similar language between Cain and sin. And then we go into verse 8. And verse 8, he calls them out while they were in the field. And, in some translations, it does go over to say that Cain called them out to the field. It's like, hey, I got to tell you something, right? And then that's when Cain would, kill him, right? Classic depictions is that, you see a painting, you think about Cain and Abel, you think of Abel just standing like in the middle of the field, just staring out to the front. You
Right.
see Cain behind him with like a big rock.
Yeah, with a rock.
It doesn't
always.
say anything like
Yeah.
that. That's
Yeah.
from lore. That's from old Jewish lore. And so kills him. He dies, so violence is there. And so that's when the Lord comes in, and then he starts to, basically the Lord intercedes from there on.
How do you even know what killing is? No one has killed anyone before. How do you even know where to hit?
Yeah. And so it's the ultimate violence. So the violence rose to the ultimate level where someone dies, right? Maybe there was violence before, but we see everything here is ultimate, right? So what's the ultimate prize? What's the ultimate rivalry? What's the ultimate thing to be envious about? And then we go to what is the ultimate violence, right? And we see murder, ultimate form of violence. And so you did this to your brother Abel. And we see a connection here with the blood of Abel and the Lord being able to hear the blood. And there is obviously a throwback to everyone made in the image of God. So murder, whether they're a believer or not, this is what Christians believe. Everyone is made in the image of God. You can't just murder anybody willy-nilly. Just because they're an infidel, you don't go and kill them because they have the image of God. They have that dignity. And this is what Christians teach. This is not what, let's say, Muslims teach or anything like that, right? And so that's where you see sort of an interceding of God. Any questions so far? Or can I move on? Let me move on real quick. I'm sure there'll be other things that'll come up. And so now there is this exposing of mimetic desire. In society, there's mimetic desire everywhere. There's envy everywhere. Everyone envies everybody. Look at society today. Look at what we're talking about with critical race theory. Look at what we're talking about with social justice. What's social justice really? When you think about it, think about DEI. People always think about it's about fairness. It's not about fairness. There's going to be some that will have regard from the Lord and some that will not. This is obviously true. Some people can go and play basketball really well, and some people cannot. Some people have 45-inch hops. And some people have 4-inch hops.
That's extremely high.
Yeah, I knew a guy who had 42-inch hops in college. He was a very short man, but he could dunk a tennis ball. I'm the one on the opposite side, 4-inch hops, where people used to call me a big waste of height. And so some people are gifted, some people are not. Oh, this is about hard work. Yeah, you think that. You do that. Live life the best you can. And guess what? You're going to end up understanding that some people just are innately better than you. And what is your face going to be after that? So Cain was very angry and his face fell. That's what it says in the Bible. Cain was angry. He probably did his best. It doesn't say. Some people assume that Cain just took any old grain and put it before the Lord. How do you know that? You don't know that. What if he gave his best? The point is, it didn't matter. Because the point is, the Lord had regard for Abel's offering because it's the Lord's prerogative. This is beyond our control. That's what it basically means. It's beyond our control what we are gifted with. You know what? Some people wish they were white when they were born, or black when they're born, or Asian when they're born. Guess what? It don't matter what you wish you were born as. You are what you are born as. I'm talking about skin color, right?
Yeah.
I thank the Lord that I was born in the United States, but I might not have been. I could have been born in Egypt. I could have been born somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
And so we thank the Lord where you are. But, if you were born in Egypt, I bet you should thank the Lord where you are too. But anyway, it does show you that not everyone's the same. That's basically the point. Not everyone's the same. And that goes all the way to the top, to the most extreme level. Someone will have what we will think or believe or see as the Lord's favor, and some people will not. Some people have these things that we call privileges now, and some people will not have those privileges. So we, in our own infinite wisdom that we think, we want to equalize the playing field. We'll call it equity. We'll call it whatever we want. And we think that it's really providing equity, but it's not. What it's really doing is it is promoting and promulgating envy, this mimetic desire. So you are really jealous. You are angry at the person with privilege, white privilege, rich privilege, intellectual privilege, whatever you call it. You could call it whatever you want. I mean, right now it's white privilege, but guess what? If that were to ever pass, there's going to be some other privilege that people are going to hold on to so that they can be angry at another party. And so it's societal class privilege. That's what it was before white race came into play, right? And so there's always something that you're going to be angry about. And you're going to say, why can't, these people do this? As we're recording, I just heard about a news organization saying, in the Winter Olympics, what's that country? Sweden? Doesn't have enough Somalian representation.
Wait, what?
If you look at the Winter Olympics, right, all the winter athletes are of Swedish descent, not Somali descent. And that's unfair because Sweden has one of the highest migration of people with Somali
So
origin,
on the
right?
Swedish team, they would like more Somalian representation.
Yeah. Well, they're,
They're Swedish Somalian.
yeah, something like that.
Okay,
and so that's what people are saying now, right? And so there's always some level of envy that people are going to think that they're going to use to say, I deserve this, I deserve this, I deserve this. And so you're always going to have some kind of anger. And that's my thing, like with everything that's going on, when you see violence erupt, think about it on a deeper level. It's gonna pull on your empathy heartstrings 100%. It's gonna pull on your empathetic heartstrings. It's gonna say, look at this tragedy here, look at this tragedy here, look at the million tragedies here, blah, blah, blah. And they're gonna go back and forth and they're gonna zoom in on one life and then you're gonna feel so bad, right? And you get like, we gotta do something about it. Look at this poor mom, look at this poor daughter, look at this poor man, and then they're just gonna keep on going over and over again until you cannot say something. You have to say, that was terrible. We need to do something about it. But in the end, my question is, what relief are you seeking? What relief are you seeking? Because we could all agree that something that we see on TV that's tragic is tragic. But what relief are we seeking? And because if the relief that we're seeking is something that continues to justify, promote, even elevate mimetic desire, guess what? I am telling you that the violence will increase. It will continue to go up. And this is exactly what we're seeing right now as we're recording in, the end of January in 2026. The violence is increasing. Why? People think, because it's unfair, because we deserve this, we deserve that. Who says you deserve anything? Or this is not fair. This is just like Hitler. This is the Gestapo. Things like that. And so people are saying all these things because in the end, I'm saying, why are you getting so mad? People think it's because they yearn for justice. But I believe that if it truly was justice that you were seeking, then now I'm going to fast forward here. I'll go back and forth. Then if it's truly justice that you're seeking, you have to go to the ultimate person that will bring ultimate justice. If it was truly justice that you're seeking, then you have to go to the cross. You have to go to Jesus Christ. If you say you're a Christian, at least you have to. Even if you're not a Christian, you have to go back 2,000 years because something changed the world in 2,000 years ago. You have to go to Jesus. If you don't go to Jesus, then we'll continue to go back to Genesis chapter 4. We will. And we'll continue to have this mimetic desire just develop. It's going to be, we're going to feed it, we're going to water it, and we're going to watch it grow. And when we see that mimetic desire grow, we're going to see violence grow as a byproduct. I have more, but I'll stop here.
So what you're saying then is, in essence, that violence is kind of an outburst, pretty much, of envy that is built up. It is the fruit of envy.
This all should be very basic right now, right? This is all basic. Hopefully, there's nothing profoundly new or something revelatory to anyone listening. This should be all basic.
I mean, the exegesis of Genesis 4 is great. So
sometimes the basic just still blows us away, right? I want to go deeper if that's okay.
Yeah.
So if your mind has already been blown, just wait till we go further. So what this goes, and this is Gerard gets into this, but other people have gotten into it in history too. Violence ultimately will beget a killing.
Okay.
Because that's the ultimate violence
Right.
done.
Okay.
So underlying society is violence. It's always there. It's waiting to erupt. Mimetic desire always it's like potential versus kinetic energy.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just increases the potential energy. One day it's just going to erupt, like Mount St. Helens, right?
Yeah.
It's just going to go, poof, it's going to explode. People are just going to die. Like Pompeii,
Yeah.
And people not even know. They're just going to be like buried
Yeah.
mid like walk or something.
Yeah.
And so people won't know. It's like, what was going on? Like, how did this happen? But don't you know that Pompeii didn't happen just out of nowhere? It was rumbling underneath. You just didn't notice, right? Maybe you're just going about your day and boom, it blew, right? But violence is like that. So violence is under society. Mimetic desire is on the rise. And violence is starting to peak out. Not P-I-Q-E-U-E, like I said before, peak out like P-E-A-K. It's about a peak out. It's like you see spurts of lava bursting out from the ground. Violence comes out. You're not going to have a society anymore. Once the ground breaks, it's over. The whole city will cave in. You're all going to die. So how do you keep violence at bay? How do you keep violence at bay? When you know it's about to burst. When you see like people charging, let's say federal officers charging people. You see all this violence. How do you keep it at bay? Isn't that the question? Isn't that what people are asking? Isn't that what people are wondering about? And that's why I'm saying movies like Kill Bill or, I didn't think that was his best one, but a lot of people love Kill Bill, so that's why I'm referencing it. But, especially Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs, you see this kind of violence erupt over and over and over again, because otherwise you have all this pent up violence, but you don't know where it's going. But you see the outlets come out where it deserves to come out or where it needs to come out. And sometimes you're like, I didn't even expect it. I didn't think it would happen. But that's what violence is, right? So how do you keep violence at bay, especially if you love your society, if you love your community, if you love your family? You love the way you live now. How do you keep violence at bay? And this is what people have discovered. And this is very evident in Genesis chapter 4. You need a sacrifice. You need a sacrifice. This is really what Rene Girard gets into too. And that's why he called his book Violence and the Sacred. You need a sacrifice. So in a sacrifice, and there are elements to this, by the way.
Hunger Games.
Something like that, yeah. Hunger Games is, just a small depiction of the very multi-level violence that people need. And so they would stage the sacrifice. Very good. And so the thing about the sacrifice, though, it needs to be special. You can't just have anybody just random die. So Hunger Games was so poetic, and it related so well because the sacrifice needs to be special, okay? The sacrifice needs to be special. That's why it's called sacrifice. There's the word sacred right in there. And there needs to be something sacred about the one that's going to receive all the violence. And the thing about the sacred is it needs to be, this sacrifice needs to be part of the community, and it also must be an outsider. It needs to be both. But that's why when the king dies, the king gets memorialized. Violence subsides. And people, pay their homage. They pay their due respects to the one that passed, the king.
So what you're saying is for society to remain at peace, or for it to even curb the innate violent tendencies, there has to be a sacrifice. And with that sacrifice comes peace once again. Is that what you're saying?
For a time.
Okay.
For a time. But society has done this throughout history.
Yeah.
Throughout history, there always needed to be a sacrifice. You always need to have a sacrifice, and you need to put all your violence, all the violence that's been being pent up in society, you need to put it on this one sacrifice. And it needs to be special. You can't just have any old schmo be the sacrifice. And so, outsider, insider, that this is Gerard speaking now. The elements of the sacrifice needs to have the characteristics rather need to be outsider insider. They need to be both an outsider and they need to be both an insider. I hope that makes sense. That's why, let's say, a king dying for his people, that would make sense because
It's your
he's not
king.
he's an outsider, meaning
Right.
he's of the elite of society,
Right.
and yet he's part of the people.
Right.
So the outsider insider makes sense, right?
But where does this even come from, though? Like the fact that that's what curbs violence.
And this is where we get all the myths. All the myths are pointing to this truth. Whether we know why, I'll get to the why, but whether we know why or not, I think it matters. That's a secondary matter for me because we have to understand this is reality. The reality is that every single society needs a scapegoat. This is also in the Bible, but a scapegoat, meaning we need to put all of our sins on this one scapegoat. And then the scapegoat in the Bible, what happens to the scapegoat? It's
chased out of
exiled,
the-
right?
yeah.
Carries the sins, and is exiled from society because they're taking all the violence upon itself and then chased out. Obviously, the donkey can't take on human violence. The donkey's a symbol, by the way, in the Bible. Like a bull dying as a sacrifice, the bull can't take on sins.
mean
The
the
bull's not
goat?
even human, right?
You said donkey. You meant goat or donkey?
Did I say donkey or
Yeah,
goat?
you said donkey.
Oh, goat. I meant
Okay,
goat,
okay.
right? Scapegoat.
Yeah, yeah,
Not
yeah.
scape donkey. A scapegoat, yeah, you would, they can't carry our sins. They can't carry all the violence. So so people think it was so, archaic and so crude, what God's people did back in the Old Testament. I don't think you have any idea of what you're talking about. What the Israelites did in the Old Testament times was the most sophisticated thing that no other nation had at their disposal because their scapegoat were actual people.
Yeah.
The Israelites just used goats, and then you're like complaining, "Oh, poor goat." You have no idea. Every single other nation to survive, because they knew of this basic reality, they used people. I mean, even think about the Aztecs, about the 80,000 that were killed in
Yeah.
one day or 1 week or whatever span of time it was.
Yeah.
They used actual people. They ripped out the hearts of actual people.
Yeah.
Because they knew that they needed to do this sacrifice for this society to continue to survive. The violence must be put on the sacrifice. And if it's not enough, they need more sacrifice. So the Aztecs or, the Mayan people, whatever historical people that were in the past, that means sin grew. That means the mimetic desire, the tragedies, the terribleness of society continued to grow until all these sacrifices couldn't contain it. That's what it means. People think too simplistically, too atheistically, and the result of that, by the way, maybe I'm skipping a few steps here, but if I am, please connect me back. But the result of that is we've become more paganistic because look at the rituals that we're doing now. You mentioned it too, but when people die from, let's say, encounters with federal officers, look at the pagan rituals that are coming out, honoring their passing because they're saying this is the scapegoat.
Right.
That's what they're doing. Whether they are knowingly doing it or not, that's what they are doing. And so killing, sacrificing, what you ritualistically do then in these sacrifices is you blame this victim of all the sins of society that are partaking in the ritual. That's why everybody needs to partake in the ritual. You can't just have like 3 people be like, this is what I think. This is why everyone needs to partake in the paganistic rituals of, let's say, leftist protesters that we're seeing here. Everyone needs to partake because even if that's why they're not satisfied if just a group of leftist protesters just protest. They're never going to say, that was enough, I said my part. Because you need all of society to partake. Because all of it needs to come down on this one sacrifice. All the violence that has been pent up because of all the sins, if you don't like the word sin, it doesn't matter. All the evil, all the bad stuff, all the terror, all of that. You get put on this one sacrifice, and that sacrifice needs to die. That's called the scapegoat mechanism, by the way.
It's that short story, The Lottery.
The lottery. Very good. So I'm telling you, this myth has gone throughout history, throughout the ages. You have short stories like the lottery. People just don't know why. Why do we have to die? We just don't understand. While they're getting stoned, right? In the short story, you have like myths. Like again, I talked about Dionysius. You have myths that we see in the Odyssey. You have all these places that we'll see here. Not just in Greek myths, but plays that we'll see. Greek plays, yeah. Let's say even modern story takes on what we see like Pulp Fiction that I mentioned. But it all goes back, I'm telling you, it all goes back to understanding, let's say, Genesis 4. If you understand Genesis 4, all of this stuff is demystified. That is the power of the Word of God and understanding the Word of God. The Holy Spirit opens up our minds to understand the Word of God, and then we see, oh, that's why this is happening. That's why violence is erupting, because we are now moving away from our understanding of the ultimate sacrifice that already took place. We reject the ultimate sacrifice. We reject it. So once we reject the ultimate sacrifice, what happens to society? You start needing to go back to what happened before, of how the nations were before. That's when we're talking about pagan stuff, right? And how did they resolve crises and violence then? You put it on a scapegoat. You put all your violence on something. So there needs to be, why do you think, for someone like you on the right, why do you think a lot of people, I'm not saying you, but a lot of people that are on the right, they just don't understand the hatred of one leader. They just don't understand. It seems irrational. Why is there so much hatred on this one leader? Why do people wish him death? Why do people want him dead? Why do they think once he dies, it's going to be okay? So now that we understand the scapegoat mechanism, it's not really a surprise. It's Cain rising up to kill Abel, saying, if I kill him, that's it. No more rivalry. God will have to accept my sacrifice. I can attain to the highest good, right? No more rivalry. I can attain to the highest good now. There's no one stopping me from it. The sacrifice needs to take place. And so that's what Cain believed. But you see the interjection of God. By his mercy, he interjected. By his mercy, he gave Cain the mark. People think by God giving Cain, it was a curse. That's how Cain saw it too. I don't see it that way. Because what happens with violent rivalry, if it's not ritualistically done? Remember, ritualistically done, it's all from chapter 4 because God came in and became a ritual of sorts. But Cain didn't do it ritualistically. Cain just did it out of sheer violence. Violence erupted, right? So what's going to happen? You know what's going to happen? Very evident in society. You don't have this ritualistic sacrifice, you just have violence come out. What happens is violence will beget more violence. This is nothing new. Violence will beget more violence, revenge, vengeance. All this stuff is going to always go back and forth. There's never going to be satisfaction. Think of the other stories that we heard about the Capulets and the Montagues. It's never going to stop, right? It's never going to stop. So what's going to happen? Then violence will continue to beget more violence, and it's never going to end. So who ends it? God ends it. God ends it by saying, here's a mark on Cain. You can't touch Cain, because who's going to go after Cain? Every single person that was on Abel's side, every single person that was close to Abel, that was affected by Abel, maybe part of Abel's family, maybe even his parents, they want to kill Cain.
Yeah.
How can you touch someone that was so dear to me? Now I'm at a loss. I've lost so much. And guess what comes in? Violence has to fill in that space. And so I need to put it out. I need to put it out against Cain. But if that goes, there's going to be a never-ending back and forth. So God, in his mercy, gives a temporary stop. Temporary because in just a few short generations, we see Lamech come up, right?
Yeah.
And so if you read the story of Genesis chapter 4, you understand Lamech, he boasts about violence because
about killing a young man.
It's a temporary stop. But it's a stop from what? And you say, why didn't he have the permanent stop? You know, you can complain about it all day.
Yeah.
But he has this temporary stop, so society isn't eradicated then and there.
Right.
That's the grace of God. The grace of God is society isn't eradicated then and there. And so he lets society continue to grow, even though society would still rebel against him. That's an incredible mercy, my friend. And so until when? Until the ultimate sacrifice takes place in his grand master plan. This is what God had foreordained before the creation of the world, right? This is what we believe. And so the plan is that all of these things are pointing then to the ultimate sacrifice, which is Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ is the ultimate, pure, complete, total sacrifice. He takes on the wrath of God, meaning all the violence that everybody should be undertaking because that's what we deserve. That's what we should have gotten. He takes all of that into himself. And there it stops forever. There is no more back and forth. There is no more escalation of violence. That's why we say he is the Prince of Peace.
So when we read that Christ brings peace, or the peace of Christ, it's not just a mindset. It's a literal peace that Christ brings as the ultimate sacrifice.
So when we think about the sacrifice of Christ, we should remember that violence is inevitable. Again, like Thanos. But it's inevitable because of our mimetic desire. We will always want to attain the highest thing on our own. We think we're able. We're not able. We're all Cain, by the way. And so we have this mimetic desire, and it turns into violence. It just does. And so I think we went into mimetic desire, so we won't really get into it. But basically, if you live with other people, you will have mimetic desire. It's just how we are kind of wired. We're wired that way.
So what's interesting is, you just talked about kind of like the root of violence and where it comes from and where it leads and how it's resolved. Why do you think society as a whole enjoys violence, though? So I understand that violence is almost like it's within, right? There's mimetic desire, and because there's sin, there's also violence. I get that it's there. But why do we enjoy it to a certain extent? So even thinking about like violent video games, violent movies, shows, the MMA, UFC, whatever it is, like John Wick, let's say, right? John Wick is like a movie that a lot of gentlemen really enjoy watching. So why do you think it is that we enjoy, to a certain extent, maybe even worship, envy, violence? And Proverbs 3:31 came up in mind, and it reads, "Do not envy a man of violence, and do not choose any of his ways." However, a lot of people today do envy a man of violence. They'll watch movies like John Wick, or they'll watch the UFC, be like, "Oh, I want to do something like that. I want to do that." And so where does this worship and enjoyment of violence come from?
Yeah, if we think about scapegoating, mimetic desire, it goes through almost every layer of society. If you really think about it, this is why you could think about it. Think about the Olympics. Instead of war, we run against each other.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Athletics, yeah.
Yeah, we compete. It's pervasive throughout societies. I could give you the universal, and I could give you the contemporary context. Let me give you the contemporary context first, and then this is the universal. I think maybe that'll make sense. It's a sign of our times. It's a sign of our times that we really enjoy violence. And it started, I believe, post-World War II. Because, it was named World War, affected the whole world, right? And so World War II, post-World War II, we saw, a lot of people, there was this huge divide. And then we saw hippies come out against the Vietnam War and things like that. And then they're pro-war people.
Yeah.
And so in the 80s, we saw artistic depictions of violence. John Wick isn't new. Rambo is overly masculine, like
Rocky,
super
right?
buff.
Yeah.
Rambo, or Arnold Schwarzenegger's movie Predator. I think. Predator? Yeah, I think it's called Predator. dudes were huge, right? And they had to fight the aliens. It was an over-exaggerated, let's say, male physique that people saw,
Yeah.
and over-exaggerated gore and violence. Okay, see blood everywhere, heads being chopped off, and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, in the 80s, there was this like really, really detailed, gory depictions of violence that we saw in the arts, in the movies especially. And that's interesting, right? Because if you look at movies in the 60s, it didn't really happen, right? Those black and whites that, you watch Gone with the Wind, like they abhorred the idea of war and things like that. But now here we are reveling in the idea of war. And so, modern day context, okay?
Okay.
I'm just saying this is where we are today. We are today because it was never resolved post World War II about what to do with violence in our society. Plus, the faith in our country has been precipitously dropping. And so they weren't bringing it to the cross, and so it needed to be depicted because otherwise it would have been put out on the streets. I think that's one of the things that you could see from Girard's theory. There's another now let me get to the universal. Violence is then inherent to humanity. Cain, all that stuff. It's just inherent to us. It's just, shall I say, innate? It's in our being. Violence is in our being. You could be playing a card game with somebody and they could call you boy, and you could get so mad you would wish violence upon the person who called you boy. So violence, my point is universally in us. It's in us. That's a universal effect. It's inherent to humanity. Now, there is something that's veiling the violence, and that's sacred.
Okay.
The sacred veils it. So whether you're a Christian or not, I'm saying all of humanity understands this. This is why we believe in gods. That's why even if you're atheistic, you have to have pagan rituals, because there needs to be a sacred to veil the violence.
Okay.
So violence is inherent. This is Girard again that's speaking. Violence is inherent. The sacred is the veil. Now, when the sacred gets pulled back, the violence comes out. That's the point. Right?
Okay.
And so now we're seeing the sacred being pulled back, meaning there's less and less Christians, there's less and less believers in society, and we're seeing violence more and more peak out. PAK, right?
Yeah.
And so it's about to erupt. It's about going out there because, again, I do sincerely believe that we are a nation becoming more and more adrift in our ways. We have foregone, we have let go of our belief in the Almighty, Christ is King. We have foregone the knowledge that our Savior has brought to the world, and the fact that we have everything. Everything depends on our understanding of how the Creator has made us. This is what our forefathers knew and believed. That's why we were made in the image of God. That means everyone has, equal dignity in the sight of God and things like that, right? All men were created equal, or one of the things that were penned from these beliefs. And so these are things that we are letting go of. And if you let go of those things, guess what you are going to pick up? So you pull back the sacred, and what is inherent to humanity will come out more and more. And so what we will be, let me go back to Cain. What we will be is we will be Cain giving the grain offering, thinking that the grain offering will alleviate our bloodlust, and it will not. It will only exacerbate it.
I do want to kind of maybe pause there because I think there's a bit more that we can tease out. And so perhaps we'll do a part 2 next week, because we still have to get to entertainment. We did touch on it. I still want to get to but there is a lot of, you talked about the sacred and how this veil kind of maybe even limits that violence. But we see so much violence in the Bible. We see so much violence done by Christians earlier on in the early church. And so I want to get to all of that. And I think I would be remiss. Is that the right word? I think I'm doing violence to the topic if we don't cover it. So we'll talk about this a little bit more.
Well, maybe we could end it on this thing. Let's end it on this note so that we can continue.
Yes.
What ends the reciprocal violence that we'll see throughout humanity is the violence that was done upon Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ takes that violence. So there's no more need for reciprocal violence. Even if there was violence in the Old Testament, it's not reciprocal violence. It's violence that God would ordain. And so that all pointed to ultimately the violence put on Jesus Christ, or the violence that will be put on us if we are not in Jesus Christ, who took on violence for us. So those that are under Jesus Christ, under the shadow of his wings, Jesus took on the violence so that we wouldn't have to. And that is a glorious statement of belief for Christians to hold on to, that the violence that we ought to receive, the violence that is innate in us and that is inherent in the world that will be put on us eventually, is then taken away by our Lord Jesus Christ. So that we can still always recognize him as the Prince of Peace. So maybe that's a good way to close off just this part in this segment.
That's a great ending to this segment. Do you have time for the next one? It's
Yeah,
3.
I think so. I think Esther's going to be a little late, but yeah. What are you going to do? Okay, she's going to make it.
Okay. So what's
So
interesting
we
is
could take our time.
okay. So what's interesting is the current event of today. Well, it's not really current. It's not really an event, but the segment that I want, and this is kind of the fun topic that I want to talk about, is seems like it's opposite of our main topic, but it's also the same. What I want to talk about is with these Korean dramas, with these love shows, or it has to do with like rom-coms, even shows here in America as well, like romantic shows, dramas and whatnot, romantic comedies. What is the general messaging behind these shows? Because I think there is a general messaging. What is it talking about in terms of our heart's desire? And can it be harmful for our consumption?
Can K-dramas be harmful for your
So the
consumption?
reason why I'm asking this is I think it touches on something that you just talked about. I think a lot of times one of the reasons why people enjoy these Korean dramas, rom-coms, drama shows is because I think it touches on envy a little bit. And I think the reason why more often than not women are so stuck on these shows is because there's a hint of envy in what the character is experiencing or what the character is going through. And so I think just like you were talking about with envy and violence, there is something about love and envy that also is connected as well. But I guess what's the messaging in these shows, rom-coms included? Because if you think about it, like there's movies here in America during the holiday season. There's always like those holiday flicks, like those holiday romantic comedy movies. They all have the same plot. It's always about some city successful woman coming back to her hometown for Christmas, and then she meets her high school crush who is the coach of the baseball team in town, and they fall in love at a coffee shop somewhere, and then it's just like that's literally what
It's like
happens.
weirdly specific.
No, but that's literally in every single movie though, right? And I think they're all targeting something. I think Korean dramas, rom-coms, other shows all target something that perhaps men get out of watching violent movies and violent films or violent shows. Women get the same thing out of these dramas and rom-coms. What is that?
There's a study entitled Empathic Neural Responses Are Modulated by the Perceived Fairness of Others.
I don't even know
It's okay.
what that.
You just look up Tanya Singer, and she did the study at the University College London, and it was published in 2006. So let me just give you this primer, okay? And this is the fascinating thing about males and females, okay? It's not a comprehensive or exhaustive study, hasn't been peer reviewed, but it is a study that's notable. So it is an economic game. It's a version of the Prisoner's Dilemma, but it's where you have actors pretty much, and so they are playing this game, and then you're watching. So they hook you up on these electrical nodes, and you're watching these guys play games. And whenever someone cheated, whoever is behind the scenes, like the referees, they would give the person that's cheating in the game electric shocks. Okay? And so when people didn't cheat, but they were perceived to have cheated, but they got electric shocks, the woman's empathy notes lit up. Okay?
Okay.
So they're like, oh man, poor guy.
I feel bad.
Yeah, I feel bad.
Yeah.
Men's also, they lit up. Poor guy. This guy didn't even cheat. Why are they giving him a shock?
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
Terrible. And then you all become justice warriors, right?
Yeah.
But there's a flip to this. Now, when an actual person who was cheating, and the people watching this, the women or men that were hooked up to those, they were watching this and they knew that this person was cheating because it was pretty blatant. And then they got shocked because they were caught cheating.
Yeah.
The woman's empathy centers still lit up in their brain. They acted almost the brain centers that were lit up were almost the same. They're almost the same as when an unfair player, like when a fair player got unfairly shocked.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the empathy centers almost exactly the same lit up when this person was now writhing in pain because he had been caught cheating.
But they
and
were
shocked.
cheating, though.
Yeah,
Right.
So they were shocked. So whether they were cheating or not cheating, if they were shocked, in this study, the women's empathy centers lit up. The men didn't, though. The men didn't. In fact, not only did men have significantly reduced, their empathy centers light up, their pleasure centers lit up. I'm not kidding. This is a real study. You can
They
look
were
it up.
excited.
They were actually
The
like
dude got
endorphins are
punished.
released. They were like, "Yeah, buddy, let's go."
That's what you get.
That's what you get. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so men and women empathy centers are actually, they react differently. That's the point. The point is, again, it's not exhaustive. There are like 1,000 studies, but this is an interesting study on social behavior that I thought was something that I'd like to share. There is something called Schadenfreude. Freude?
Is it German?
Yeah.
Probably Schadenfreude.
Schadenfreude.
Yeah,
Freude,
probably.
right. Anyway, it's actually a term that people use, Schadenfreude, right?
Like daily.
It's just a
that's
normal
just
term.
so Schadenfreude of you.
Yeah, Schadenfreude.
That's too Schadenfreude.
Yeah,
Yeah, like that.
Freude. Schadenfreude.
You're so
Yeah.
Schadenfreude today.
It's Schadenfreude. Anyway, it's a German term that means you derive pleasure from others' misfortunes. And so, men have more Schadenfreude.
Okay, Schadenfreude.
Yeah. And so, you have neuroimaging that I talked about of the empathy centers being lit up and stuff like that. When you watch, it's not just K-drama. Give me a break. They're not like the only ones.
No.
It's any kind of drama. People, there used to be something called soap operas.
Yep. Telenovelas.
And so it's during the day, and
Yep.
a lot of women were able to watch it because most at that time when soap operas were really big, it would be like the stay-home moms that would be able to watch it, right? Because the dads would be out working. Now both people are working, so I don't know where soap operas would get their viewership.
Or they work from home, so they both watch it.
Maybe it could be.
Yeah.
Like Battlestar Galactica. Both me and
Was,
my wife both watched it.
Oh! They said that was like a daytime show.
My wife and I both watched it. Yeah.
Okay.
But what this does is whatever lights up that brain where your empathy centers light up, or even if you have Schadenfreude, or you have like the pain of, because I think that's what lit up for me when I was watching K-dramas, because people would be in pain and I would be laughing, and then my wife hated that because she wanted someone to share in that empathy that she had for the misfortune that she was watching on television. But for me, it was like, that's what he gets. Why is he doing this? What an idiot, or something like that's what I would be thinking, right?
Yeah.
And so, whatever it is, when your empathy centers are lit up or you have endorphins released, we kind of get addicted to that. It's not reality. So we're not watching things in real life that are lighting up our empathy centers, or our releasing our endorphins, or lighting up our pleasure centers. It's this made up stuff. However, to your point, I think that people are now more into politics. So whatever you see on the news now, or your Instagram or TikTok, it's usually Instagram or TikTok. You'll see these violent depictions, like we were talking about, like you said. We could reference it back. You'll see these things, and it'll light up your center. So whether you are right, center, left in politics, you're watching this because it lights up something, either your empathy center or your Schadenfreude, and your brain is being lit up, and you're getting these chemicals released. And I think that's just where we are. Yeah. I said I'd do a roundabout way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's my roundabout way of answering whatever you were asking. I don't even remember what you were really asking.
No, I was just kind of curious as to the draw of such shows because, I enjoyed it. It's during some episodes it does hurt. But
What was the
might
show?
be heartburn, though.
Crash Landing on You, or the Moon, or something like that, right?
No, that's not the one. That was like a long time ago.
Yeah, but you watched it and you cried.
Queen of Tears.
Queen of Tears.
I didn't cry.
Yeah. Good thing that's not going to make it, because I would have added Queer of Tears.
The Queen of Tears.
He is the Queen of Tears.
No, I didn't cry during it, but I just wanted to, because right now, it's been number one on Netflix like globally. And so it's not just Korean speaking people, right? It's English speaking people. It's everywhere around the world. There has to be some kind of pull. That's why it's so popular. And it's not only Korean dramas, like I said, it's telenovelas, it's rom-coms, it's drama shows, it's any type of love story, Romeo and Juliet, whatever it is. I think there is a draw of love stories that is similar to violent movies and games.
Oh yeah, any kind of release any kind of chemical release that your body produces watching something habitually, especially. Let's say you're an avid K-drama watcher. Then there are chemicals that are habitually released. So it doesn't matter if it's necessarily good or bad, or you're going to continue to watch it because you want these chemicals released, whether it's your empathy, areas in your brain being lit up, or your endorphins being released and your pleasure centers being lit up. Whatever it is, it's going to get you hooked because it's become habitual. So you kind of need this. And so this is what we are seeing with any kind of, let's say, something that, I hate using the word addiction, but something that you are continually and habitually viewing and watching and taking in, eating, consuming, right?
Chocolate.
Whatever it is, it's releasing something again and again for you. And this is why we go back to, like a dog returns to his vomit. Even if we know it's terrible, it doesn't matter. I'm not saying K-dramas are terrible. I'm just saying that even if it were terrible, you would return to it because you're used to getting these chemicals released. Now, can I get to a deeper level on this one? Just for fun. Just for fun. Okay. Just for fun.
Korean dramas.
Just for fun. Okay. Just for fun. Let me just go on to the next thing. And for me, now this is for me. This is me speaking. I believe this is called conditioning. So you condition. So it's not only habitual. It's something that you condition yourself to look for and to want. Yes, but it's what you condition yourself to see. I hope that makes sense. So it doesn't matter if you watch John Wick like 51 times or Pulp Fiction like 30 times or K-dramas over and over again. I'm just saying whatever you do habitually conditions you. And then what you are conditioned with, that's the lens that you take out to the world outside. So if you're conditioned with, let's say, Rambo or something like that, you go outside in the world and you see violence. That's what it is. If you condition yourself with K-drama, you go outside into the world and you become a wuss. No, you see the world where, life is such a big tragedy. What What if my mom dies? It's going to be so sad. I don't know, whatever it is. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? So you condition yourself with what you continue to brush up against because that's what's going to form you. I hope that makes sense. And so I'm not saying watching K-drama is bad. I'm not saying watching Rambo is bad. I'm saying knowing this, then what you would habitually engage in, you would take care. So if you habitually put yourself in a place where you always let this wash over you over and over and over again, you will be formed by it because it will condition you. And so what we want to do is, knowing this, we would rather be conditioned with the truth. What gives us truth, what is beautiful, what is good, what is, true. And this is what we continually talk about from Philippians, right? And so whatever is good, true, and beautiful, we want to have that condition us. And so even if we were watching K-drama, if you have this lens on, you'd be looking for the good, true, and beautiful. You wouldn't let the K-drama completely wash over you and have the K-drama become that canon which forms you. The Bible is forming you, and then you see the world through that lens rather than the K-drama lens or, the Rambo lens or the Pulp Fiction lens or whatever it is, John Wick lens.
Right. Yeah, I just thought this might be a helpful topic for me.
Yeah, I mean, that study has stayed with me for a very long time. I always wondered when I could use it. And I used
here
it.
it is.
It is pretty fascinating, though, if you think about the Korean dramas or even shows on Netflix that trend number one.
Yeah.
It's either ultra violent, ultra gory like Squid Games,
Yeah.
or it's love stories like the one that you love.
No, so that's why I bring it up. I think there is a common theme that runs through it. Like one's super violent, one's super lovey-dovey, and I think it's just envy.
I mean, I didn't watch a lot of K-dramas, but I've watched a few, and I may be wrong on this, but I think K-dramas are very successful and their message is very popular because they are able to caricaturize all the major elements into one or two or three or four people. And then they are the typical person. So you have, if you're watching Squid Games, you have the gambler, he's like a decrepit dude. He's just going to always pick the sleazy thing to do.
Right, no matter what.
And he plays that part to the extreme caricature degree. There's no real nuance in his character. But then you could relate to that because you're not really relating to the person. You're relating to what this person is caricaturizing. Right? And then you have the innocent.
Yes.
Like innocent to every degree where they get it taken advantage of. And then you have this, and then you have this. So they're all kind of these caricatures. That's why people didn't like the caricaturization. I think one of the criticisms I've heard from Squid Game, I watched the first season, not the
second one,
not the other ones, because they thought that the caricaturization of the rich people or the elitists were not accurate or something like that. Look at them, their acting is terrible, blah, blah, blah. But that's the caricature.
Right.
The caricature is these guys aren't like real people. They're like just hollow shells of people, and that's why they're like, I like this about this thing when this happened.
Right.
With their really poor English. And so that's a caricature. And to the Koreans, that would have been like on spot. It would be on the money. And so it'd be spot on, I should say. And I think that's where its success lies. You get, these really I don't want to say dumbed down because they're not. They're just really simplified, but they're personified in just this one person. So like, let's say the love interest, this woman, absolute purity, strength, some aggressiveness, but still pure, like she will never not have that pureness, that kind of thing. And she's the ultimate love interest of this guy.
Right.
And so that's who you cry over. You yearn for that.
Not
I'm
me.
talking about you, like Sam.
No.
You yearn for that purity and that innocence. So you relate to the girl more than the guy, which is interesting, isn't it? That's interesting. I think that's something that we can
relate to
delve into in our counseling courses in the future.
No, but I definitely think it's interesting. I always think it's interesting what's trending on Netflix because that's one of the larger streaming platforms, and if something is really, really popular, you kind of have to wonder why. Like for a long time, this murder mystery was number one. Then you have like a war movie be number one, and it's just kind of interesting to see what people are watching, what people are stuck on, what people are addicted to. So I thought it was interesting, kind of social commentary.
Yeah. Well, I hope I didn't leave a bad taste in your mouth in watching TV shows. This is again why my wife does not want to watch stuff with me, because then I'll say what I said to you. Be like, this is the reason why. So can't we just watch it? Can't we just be entertained? And then, I'll think immediately of Maximus Decimus Meridius.
Are you not entertained?
Yeah, but that's something else.
Well, we'll be continuing on this topic next week as we continue this. I guess it's a mini series now of 2 episodes on violence.
You love K-drama.
I didn't. No.
You're saying mini series.
No, those are called.
No one says
those are called limited.
Except people who watch K-dramas.
Those are called limited series now. By the way, it's not. They're called right, Dawei? No, David knows. It's called limited series now.
No, that's different.
So on this limited series of 2 episodes,
why are you ignoring
on this
that's just a Netflix
on this
thing.
limited series of 2 episodes, we'll be continuing on this topic of violence next week, and so please look forward to that. We thank you for listening to this episode of the Dear Church podcast. We hope and pray that this has been a blessing in your ears. Fight the good fight, finish the race, keep the faith.
Peace.